Okay, I want to design my universe. Where should I start? Whether you are a game writer, a D&D master, or a fantasy author, you've probably asked yourself this question the first time you tried to build a world. Creating a universe is a beautiful process. You are the creator. You watch how the stars explode into a million pieces, and from the ashes, the dust, and your own sweat and blood, something new is born. That is what I call magic. So today we are diving into the core of fantasy creation, how to build your fantasy universe. This video is a sort of starter toolkit. I'll cover the basic theory, the essential questions to ask yourself, common mistakes to avoid, and some resources to help you create and systematize all the info for your world. So I will add some links below this video for you to check out. And let's begin. But before we start, greetings stranger. I'm Katie, a fantasy writer and a narrative game designer. Here we talk about fantasy, games, books, also sharing some writing tips. So if you're interested in why things are working a certain way they are in the fantasy genre, you are welcome here. When it comes to fantasy world building, a lot of people think something like, oh, that must be easy, just create good guy medieval Europe, land there, and bad guy Ultima Dark Empire, slap them on the map with an ancient forest in the middle, maybe neutral, I'm just here for the exposition, land there, and done. Well, it's a bit more than that. World building is more than just maps and made-up fancy names, it's a mirror, a reflection of our own world, and like any reality it needs structure, logic, and internal rules. A well-built world enhances your story. It makes everything feel more real and believable. The interaction between the world and your characters breathes life into your narrative. It shapes who your characters are, their beliefs, their lifestyle, even their physical appearance. Now, your readers don't need to see every single corner of your world. In fact, they shouldn't. They don't need to know 100% of your universe's lore to understand what's happening. Just like in real life, some things unfold in the background. One event leads to another. One action causes a ripple effect. World building is like a snowball, and great world building doesn't blow on your head. Just like in writing overall, remember the architects versus gardeners and travelers video? There are two main approaches to world building, hard and soft. At this point, I'm convinced writers just love systematizing everything. So, quick disclaimer, there is no right or wrong way to build your universe. In fact, depending on the story or stories you want to tell, your approach might vary from the project to project. Hard world building focuses on creating logical, rule-based, and highly detailed systems. Think of it like a precision machine. Everything works under strict rules, whether it's magic, politics, economies, cultures, or even the cosmos. The first name that comes to mind here is, of course, the father of modern fantasy, John Tolkien. Writers using this approach usually follow principles like detailed geography and ecosystems. This includes creating maps describing regions, analyzing natural resources, and understanding socioeconomic structures. Some writers even study geology and real-world map-making to make their world more believable. Interconnected systems. Magic, politics, economy, religion, everything is linked, so if you remove or change one element, it affects everything else. Grounded accuracy. Hard world building often draws from real-world science, history, or technology, especially in genres like hard sci-fi. In fantasy, this might mean basing your setting on a specific historical period or event. This method takes time, a lot of it. But if you're crafting a story or game with complex socio-political systems, deep lore, or plan to write multiple stories in one universe, hard world building can be a perfect fit for you. Now, on the other hand, we have soft world building. This approach is more character-driven and flexible. The world shapes itself around the story rather than the other way around. And it's often used in stories told from characters' POV, where the character may not fully understand the world, but they feel it. The audience experiences their world the same way, through mood, tone, and suggestion, rather than strict definitions. So soft world building has several features like fluid rules. It can refer either to soft magic, fantasy assumption, or more fantastical elements. But be careful, it doesn't mean that you can always explain your plot or lore holes with, well, this is magic stuff. No. Atmosphere and explanation. So soft world building has a strong emphasis on the atmosphere and how it affects the characters and the plot. A sense of wonder. Great soft building feels like peeking through a keyhole. You see just enough to feel something magical, but the rest is left to your imagination. Like in the general approach for writing, most of the creators tend to blend both hard and soft world building when creating their universes. The most important thing that you should keep in mind is consistency. Define what you want to tell and stick with it. Because your job as a creator isn't to build a world just for the sake of it. It's to build a world that reveals your story. Now that we've covered the big picture, the definition of world building, and the two core approaches, let's get into the stuffing. Let's talk about the core elements you should include, or at least keep in mind, when designing your world. Before diving into more detailed breakdown, I recommend you first and foremost decide whether you are going to have any time reference in your universe. It's not obligatory though, so like ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, Roman Empire, etc. So read about that specific time period and write down some details that you find interesting. This won't just make your universe feel more personal, it will also give you a better perspective of what life could be like in your world. So, now let's talk about geography. It's one of the first things that comes to mind when we think about world building. Before drawing anything, ask yourself a few questions. Like, where is the story set? What is the climate there? Is it possible to make it more interesting? Take a typical example. There are ruthless barbarians and a lot of snow in the north, and in the south we have deserts and camel stuff. That setup isn't bad at all, don't get me wrong. My point is, don't fall into the pattern unless there is a reason for it. Are there any also flora and fauna stuff? That's one of the reasons I suggest starting with the time reference and setting. Your characters most likely wouldn't make a law ointment if they are living in a North Forest. They probably wouldn't know about corn or tomatoes if the setting is based in ancient Mesopotamia. These are small details, but they either make your world feel authentic or ruin its consistency. Now, history and lore. So there is no need to create a 1,000-year timeline of every drought, war, and royal drama. Just think about the key events, the ones your world couldn't exist without. So what came before the story? 5, 20, or 50 years ago? Why is it important? Were there any ancient kingdoms, lost gods, or fallen empires? What's left of them now? Legends, ruins, or maybe just whispers in the forbidden books? Is there shared mythos? Who remembers it? Do neighboring countries have something in common like folklore, history, or maybe even a few words in their dialect? Now magic and power. Fantasy and magic go hand in hand. This deserves a whole bunch of separate videos, but for now just consider the basics. Is there magic? How does it work? Who has access to it? What are the costs of it? How do people view it? Is it a curse or blessing or something used in everyday life? Culture and society. Another topic that deserves its own playlist. Keep in mind, designing multiple races and cultures is a lot of work, so don't start with 5 different races from 5 different countries, each with 5 completely unique cultures. Well, you get me. In my experience, it's easier to start with one country or race and then move on to another. So ask yourself, who lives in your world? What are their traditions, art, language, holidays, and food? What are their main occupations? Politics and conflict. Here is my advice, take it easy. Don't start with 3 countries at war, each with 5 factions, and each faction with 3 guilds, where everyone wants power. I mean, you'll end up looking like this guy. Instead, ask yourself, who holds power? Who wants it? Are there factions, guilds, empires? Who are allies and who are enemies? Technology and economy. Is your world a medieval one, or steampunk, or post-apocalyptic? How do people make a living there? Are there trade routes or currency system? And here is a small warning, don't overdo it. Don't try to define every single rule, create 100% accurate maps, or write 10 volumes of lore. Your universe will change, it will evolve, and that's okay. The story comes first, and world building is just a small but meaningful part of it. So we've asked questions. We've done some research. What comes next? Building, of course. There are 2 main methods to start. Top-down. Well, it's basically when you start with the big picture like world, continents, major empires, then zoom into a specific region your story is going to take place in. Bottom up. This is the opposite. You start small, maybe a village, a character, or tavern, and then expand outwards as the story demands it. Which one is better, you might ask? You already know my answer, right? Neither. It all depends on your style. Maybe you just had a flash of a cozy tavern where your main character sits surrounded by friends. That's a perfect starting point. Or maybe you've always dreamed of designing a volcanic island where dark elves ride around on giant fleas. I'll call them Silt Striders. Well, anyways, shout out to you if you got the reference. Magic is the lifeblood of many fantasy settings. And sure, there are plenty of videos out there about soft versus hard magic systems, but right now let's just talk about the most basic elements your world needs if you want include magic. Because good magic isn't just flashy spells or convenient ways to get characters out of a dead end. It should have meaning. So ask yourself, what is the source of magic? Is it learned or inherited? What are its limits? What are its costs? How does it affect society? Does it create inequality? And at this point, I strongly recommend looking into Brandon Sanderson's 3 laws of magic, which are: an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. Limitations are more interesting than powers. Expand on what you already have before adding something new. If you're looking for inspiration, I personally find the magic system in the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss really interesting. Culture is the next big thing to think about. And it's more than just clothes and accents. Culture is built from people's experiences, shared history, traumas, and how they see themselves. Here are some tools to help you deepen the culture and your world. Create a language fragment, even just a few words. We're not John Tolkien, no need to build full languages from scratch, but fragments of an ancient dialect or a few meaningful names can have a powerful impact on your world and your story. Design a holiday. What does it celebrate? How is it celebrated? And most importantly, why do they do this? Holidays reflect values. They show what culture honors, fears, or wants to remember. Define taboos. What's forbidden or considered shameful and why? Is it connected to religion, magic, or just basic survival things? Taboos say a lot about how a society functions and what it is afraid of. What stories do they tell their children? Are there myths, legends, simple moral tales passed from parent to child? And do those stories change depending on the region or province? Folk tales reveal a culture's beliefs, fears, and hopes, their memory in narrative form. What do they laugh at? Humor reveals worldview. One of my favorite exercises is find 5 jokes your character would laugh at. And disclaimer, they don't have to be funny to you, just to them. The way people joke tells you how they see the world and themselves. The more specific you make it, the more universal it feels. The small details, the songs, the sayings, the taboos, those are what breathe life into your characters and cultures. The next thing we are going to talk about is tools. You don't need to be an artist to make a map, and even a rough sketch helps to understand the general idea. But if you're like me and have a lot of different papers where you write down some info and then forget about it and throw them, you may like to try some tools. And the first one is Inkarnate. Even the free version is pretty good for defining the general idea. Wonderaft, Dungeon Scroll, also pretty good. The next thing I really love are databases. So if you knew how much I love databases, you see writing your lore in docs so world can be helpful. But when you have to expand your lore, it may become really hard to remember all the small details and nuances. For this, I use Notion to systematize the knowledge. And this app can be useful not only because you literally divide the info by categories, but also because you can connect different topics. So later, even without your notice, you will see how things will be connected to each other, like the economy description cards will be connected to the politics or guild cards or whatever. So Notion is the best, but also like there are tools like Obsidion or Yonote. So Yonote is, I would say, a cheaper version of Notion, and it has reduced functionality. Well, I'm not a fan of mood boards myself, but such tools as Miro can be very useful when it comes to finding references for clothes and stuff. I used Miro to create a timeline for my game writing when I worked on a AAA project because there were a lot of historical connections between different races, and it was very useful to see them all in one line. Don't let the law strangle your plot. As I said before, you don't need to have an encyclopedia before starting your universe. Here's a trick to simplify your life. World building is an iceberg. You show 10%, but you know 100. Reveal only what the character sees, feels, or needs to act on. Nobody likes an unpredictable piece of lore thrown on their face. So, for example, instead of in 1234, the capital of the Silver Reign fell under the weight of the Swamp Kingdom's army, and so ended the reign of the Good Guy dynasty. Try something like this. Arthur passed the ruins. Once the capital of a rich empire, it is now only a pile of stones in which one could still see some scraps of silver. His horse gave a grudging snort. A rotten swamp smell was tickling his nose too. Ever since the swamp army has settled in here, this smell has followed him everywhere. Arthur hated it, but not as much as the reign of a bad guy. The story always comes first, and then comes the lore. Before we end our video, let's see some typical mistakes that are often made by young creators. Don't dump your lore on your reader or player. I know you love your universe, I really do, but come on, don't drop 10 pages of history in chapter 1. Let the world unfold naturally, bit by bit. Don't build forever and never start your story. Avoid world builder's disease, writing 100 pages of lore, timelines, and geography, but never actually writing the story. Your world doesn't need to be perfect before you begin. It just needs to be enough to support your narrative. Be consistent. Even the wildest, weirdest worlds needs internal logic. Once you set a rule, stick to it. Let your world change. Cultures evolve. Magic fades or grows stronger. Cities rise and fall. Observe it. Write down what you see. Let characters shape the world and be shaped by it. The world is the stage, but your characters are the heart of the story. So let them interact with the world in meaningful ways. And finally, the most important thing, have fun. You're a god, an architect, a cartographer, or dreamer. There are no rules, only tools. Use what helps and discard what doesn't. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was useful, and if so, leave a like, a comment, and of course subscribe for more on writing, games, and fantasy creation. And until next time, keep building and happy writing.